what are the organizations in my area where the top caterers, photographers, florists, planners meet. I want to be part of those organizations. So again, we could spend a lot of time talking about pricing. The point is, if you offer great value, if you give exceptional parties, then like Randy Bartlett likes to say, you'll always have another job. Every wedding we do is an audition for the next wedding. And I think it's going to become less about the music and more about how did we lead the party? How did we help the bride alleviate stress? How did we help her have exactly the wedding she wanted? There's a statistic that over 50% of weddings now happen outside of a church. And I think part of that is because this generation doesn't like to be told what they can and can't do. In a Catholic church, you can't have recorded music. You can't have secular music. You can't do this. You can't do that. And I think that's why so many brides are choosing to have their wedding outside of a church. In my presentation, I talk about how we used to have a choice of Coke or Pepsi. And if you went to a restaurant, that was it. Today's bride has an entire service station, a whole gas station full of beverage choices. That's her life in a nutshell. She has always grown up getting exactly what she wants. She's not spoiled. It's just that she's grown up in a totally different atmosphere than some of us who are more experienced grew up in. We had limited choices, limited options, and when it came to our wedding, we followed traditions. You will follow tradition. You will have this. Today's bride doesn't want that and won't do that.
Well, and I think a lot of brides don't know that they have the option either. I mean, yes, there are some brides that don't want that, but there's an awful lot of other brides that they still believe that they have to follow that format of tradition, and it's up to us to be able to explain that no, you don't. You don't have to. You don't have to do that. You can do. I met with a bride. I'm guessing 3 or 4 years ago. At a sales consult, and one of the first things she told me was that as soon as she and the groom arrived, they wanted to do all of the formalities, everything from the cake, the first dance, parent dances, all of it. They wanted to do everything right after they arrived. And when I asked her why they wanted to do those things after she arrived, she says, well, since we have to do them anyway, we just want to get them out of the way. And my response to that is no. I mean, and if you have a bride say that to you, my response would be, don't do those things if you don't want to do them, because you're going to miss that emotional connection with your guests. They're going to know if you're just going through the motions. And if you're just going through the motions, then why should they pay any attention to that? Why should, if you're not doing anything as a DJ or as a couple to engage the guests from the very moment they walk through the door to make them want to pay attention, then why do all of the formalities later? Because nobody's going to be focused on those things. That's why it's so important to engage and to entertain and to connect and keep those guests interested all the way through dinner and into those formalities. And again, a lot of it just depends on what market you're in. I just saw a video not long ago while I was waiting for this call of a couple of DJs that posted that they had people up and dancing this past weekend before even the dinner was served. And they were showing those videos. I think that's great. It's a great way to get the guests engaged and get them involved.
I think that's having that discussion, sitting down and planning with the bride. And that's, if you want, Ron, we can kind of jump into how do we differentiate ourselves if we don't have the music?
Right.
In terms of, have anybody asked their brides and grooms now ask them to shorten their first dance? Okay, yep. Father-daughter dance. I don't want to dance with my dad for more than 1.5 minutes. He changed my diapers and he's paying for this, but I'm only going to give him 1.5 minutes out of my 6-hour wedding. I fought that for a while, and then I realized how many brides were asking you for that, and I realized it wasn't an individual bride thing, it was a generation thing. The other thing that's happened with all of us is this has caused our attention span to go to about 7 seconds. Think about the last time you were in the bank. How long was it you were standing in the bank line before you did this? You just looked at your phone in the car 3 minutes ago before you walked in the bank. This is what we're competing with when we're on the mic. This is what the bride's guests are competing with when we're trying to get them to pay attention to something. So as Ron said, getting them emotionally engaged, it is harder and harder than ever before. And I stress, when you talk, make your comments as short as you can possibly make them. I mean, write down what you want to say. If you have a script, script it out, and then try to take 10 words out of that opening comment. Only interrupt when you absolutely have to. So there's a lot of other things we can talk about, but I think we're fighting attention span, short attention span problems. We're fighting guests that are used to having two screens with them at all times. So they've got the phone, they've got their TV on, maybe they're looking at a recipe on an iPad. How do we keep 125, 200 guests engaged? And I think it's by shortening things. If the bride wants her dance shorter, then yes, shortening our comments and making things, as Ron said, as entertaining and as engaging as possible. Ron, do you want to talk about kind of the process that you go through with a couple to plan their wedding, to talk about the things that you do that are not music related?
Well, for me, the process for me begins about 3 months in advance of an event, of where I meet with my couple for the first time. And basically that meeting is nothing more than a getting acquainted meeting. That's spending an hour just talking about the two of them, where they're from, talking about the relationship, the who, what, when, where, why, and how, the proposal, getting all the details that I possibly can about the couple, because it is from that information that I'm able to provide them with ideas that are going to be unique to the two of them during the planning session, which usually happens about 2 months in advance of their event. And again, that meeting again can take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours, just depending on the couple and whether or not I'm involved in the ceremony or not. But it's an opportunity to not only put together a timeline, but to bring them on board with the timeline, to engage them in that timeline and why we're doing the things that we're doing, the way that we're doing them. One of the things that I think that is important in our industry is that we have a failure at sometimes, I think, to be completely and totally honest with our couples about what our capabilities are and why we're doing the things that we're doing, rather than just saying, hey, this is, we're doing it this way because this is the way we do it. I go so far as to explain to a couple, look, this is the reason why I suggest that we do this thing this way. You can change it if you'd like, but this is the reason why. I'm going to go to that extra little step to try to explain that to them. Third time we get together is to actually do a walk through the venue and wrap up loose ends and try to take care of as much as we possibly can. My goal is to try to be out of their hair no later than 30 days prior to their event. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have continuing conversation. It just means that as far as meeting with me, we're done. They don't have to worry about that in that last month of planning. I think where I'm going with this is that I invest a tremendous amount of time. There's a certain expectation that my couples are going to have when they contract me. They know that this is the process. This is how much time they're going to have to invest. If they're not willing to invest that time with me, then we're probably not going to be a good fit for each other, which I understand that that's not a problem for me. Some couples don't want to do that. They just want music, and that's fine. But I would be very unhappy doing their event, and I think they would be very unhappy with me doing their event if that were the case. So there's a tremendous amount of time for me that goes into the prep and getting things ready to go. But when it comes to the actual event, Jim, you're the guy that most people turn to and they say, this is the way you handle this is the way you work with guests at the event to get them involved. And what do you do?
Sure. Let me address a couple of things real quick before I answer. Jacob said that he's lucky to get his clients to sit down with him for more than 35 minutes. I think that comes back to who is your ideal client? Why did they seek you out? What are the reasons they decided to go with your service? About 5 or 10 years ago, I made that list of places I wanted to work, and it's a really good exercise. If you sit down and write a description of your ideal client, look through this 2017 clients and point to the ones that were your favorites. What did they have in common? How old were they? Where did they go to school? What do they do for a living? I realized I work for a lot of nurses and a lot of teachers. Those are people that seem to like a lot of attention to detail. They do a lot of preparation. They do a lot of studying. And so that seems to be a good fit for my service. So if you're having trouble getting people to meet with you, then maybe there's a disconnect between the clients that are coming to you and your service. Maybe it's a better idea for you at the beginning of the process to say, now, we are going to have this many meetings. And I always tell people, I want to get all the guesswork out of your head. I want to get all those frantic thoughts that are going through your mind out of your head on paper so that you're so relaxed on your wedding day, you can really have a good time. Ron, what do I do? And Bill, I'm sorry, Ron, you mentioned in your meetings asking clients why they want to do things. And Bill Herman down there is the king of why. You don't take things at face value. That's why a meeting, I used to like to have short meetings, but you need at least an hour or a couple of times meeting with them for about an hour. And always ask one more question. Randy Bartlett's famous for saying that. And Bill Herman's famous for saying why. Why do you only want to dance with your dad for a minute and a half? So specifically, how do I present a great experience for my clients? First, it's a lot of planning, and then the day of, it's being there extra early. And then I pretend that I'm the host of the party. If you think about having people at your house, what do you do? How do you act? Do you greet the guests at the door? Do you talk to every one of your guests if you're having people over to your house? My parents called it having company over. And we had company over to our house all the time. My parents threw dinner parties constantly. As a young kid, 5 or 6 years old, I remember we lived in a tri-level. And they would have guests down on the middle level, and we were trying to sleep upstairs, and my dad's laughter would just echo up the stairs. So it's ingrained in me to take people's coats, to help make them comfortable. So here's a couple of things I do. I stand at the door or in the front lobby or in the foyer as each guest walks in. Now, how can I do that, and why do I do that? I get to venues at least 2 hours early, sometimes 3 hours early if they'll let me. I set up, I cool down, I change into my tux, and then I just walk the venue. Where's the gift table? Where do guests find out where their tables are? Where are the table numbers in the room? Is it 1 through 15 over here and 15 through 25 over here? Is it all odd table numbers over here? If you go to a 5-star restaurant, the maitre d' seems to read your mind. I try to do that. I try to be the person who knows everything there is to know about that venue. Where are the restrooms? Then I stand by the door and I greet the guests as they come in, and I smile. And I say, how was the ceremony? Did you see the bride's dress? How does she look? I haven't seen her yet. Where are you from? How do you know Katie and Jeff? Just make quick small talk with every person that walks in the door. Carry their gifts. Help them find the bar if they can't find that themselves. So greeting guests as you would if you were having people over to your house is job number 1. Number 2, I never sit down, I never eat, and I am constantly on the move. During cocktails and dinner, I try to talk with every single person there for at least a sentence or two. Hi, how are you? Need anything? Everything going okay? How are those appetizers? They look delicious. So pretty soon, Carrie and Jeff will be here, and then we'll introduce them. Would you all come join us for dinner? Rather than make announcements on the microphone during the cocktail hour, like if we need to move 250 guests from the lobby to the ballroom, I never do that on the microphone anymore. even if the catering director comes to me and says, can you make an announcement? Here's what happens. If you have 200 guests, 190 of them are talking to somebody. So by the time you interrupt and say what you were going to say, they still haven't stopped talking to the other person yet. But if you've been that friendly smiling face as they walked in the door, and you go around to clusters of people off the microphone and say, hey, Ian, it's time for dinner. Hey, Rick, will you come join us for dinner? Dale, we're ready to serve you. Carlos, you're at table 17, right? That's right over here. Come on in. The food's hot. We're ready to serve you. Come on in. People move faster. And now you have a personal connection. So when they are seated and it's time for dinner, they shut up when you make your first announcement. I didn't realize how effective that was until I had been doing that for about a year. But I realized I never had to say anymore, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have to do that anymore. When I say my first word, everybody pays attention because I'm not a stranger to them anymore. They see me as the person who has all the answers, the person with the clipboard. I always carry my clipboard, and they listen. And those little things add up to a more personal experience, and they trust you so that when the dance floor opens and you play your first set, they respond because you've welcomed them into your home, the dance floor.
Hey, what you're talking about when, ladies and gentlemen, so what Randy Bartlett calls, I believe he calls it directing by microphone, or directing through the microphone, trying to get people what you want them to do over a microphone rather than just taking that personal approach that you're talking about. I think I want to go back just for a moment because we were talking, and I know that someone said that they could barely get anybody to meet with them. I think for all of us, something I'm trying to write an article about now is called managing expectations. And when you first meet with a couple, do they know what it is that do they understand the process? Do they understand what their expectations should be? Not just understanding what their expectations are, but do they have an understanding of what your expectations are going to be as well? That's why I think a lot of DJs seem to have a problem with getting like planning materials in advance of an event. I'm only getting this like a couple of days before. Well, for me, that's a matter of communication, that there wasn't those expectations, your expectations weren't communicated to the couple well enough so that they knew that they had how important this information was to get to you, so that it would assure that their event would be the best and be the most memorable. So Jim, when you do these things that you're talking about, is this something that in a sales process you also describe to your couples, or is this just something that you do? For lack of better words.
I undersell and over-deliver. And I think those little things surprise and delight them. And that's a term that you'll know from Disney, Ron, but you don't want to tell them everything you do or how you're going to do everything. You want to tell them the results. Jacob said he sees the MC as integral, and you're exactly right. I think, again, as brides and grooms, I don't know about you guys, I'm having my clients really wanting to give me a lot of input on the music. And that is a function of the fact that they've grown up with Spotify and Pandora. Some of them have never owned a CD. A 23 or 24-year-old bride skipped the CDs. So the MC, your MC skills in terms of not meaning just the master of ceremony, the MC, the speaking part, but the MC in terms of the host, I think is going to become more and more important. And that means the planning process, walking them through and asking them why they want things to be a certain way. Those are all going to be very, very important in the future. How do you get clients to better understand your value? Ian asked that question. By asking them the right questions back. I forget what book I read or seminar I heard it in, but somebody said, how do you get better answers? Ask better questions. Instead of asking clients how many guests are going to be there, and then you can tell them, well, I'll need to bring a 200,000 watt speaker system. And no, you ask them, what do you want your guests to say when your party's over? Ask them questions that get into their emotions and their results, and that then lets them come to the conclusion of how you help establish value, why you're valuable. Instead of telling them, show them, lead them to it by asking the right questions. Does that make sense?
And it's involving in that conversation rather than just saying, this is what I do, and this is how much this is going to cost you. It's more of a matter of allowing them to see a picture of that evening, of what is it going to look like. Tell me about the last wedding reception that you went to, and the things that you saw that were memorable, and the things that you maybe weren't so memorable. Now let's talk about how we can change those things and make them better for your event. So you can actually draw a different picture for them, so they can visualize what it is that you're talking about. And I agree. I think asking that question of why a lot. When I took the entertainment experience workshop, that was one of the big things. That was my major takeaway from that workshop, was the question of why. It's one of those things where you go, why didn't I think of that question in advance? And it's funny because that question follows over into I've been taking improv, and that's another one. That's part of improv, is that if this is possible, what else is possible? Why? And so that also helps you in helping them formulate a picture in their head of what their evening is going to look like, I believe. If they can't answer the question of why, then you have to be going, so why is it you want to do that? I don't know. It goes back to, you don't have to do anything. There are no rules when it comes to weddings. There's nobody that says you have to do anything. So if you can't answer the question of why, then maybe we should looking at either eliminating it or maybe doing something different.
Well, one of the best questions to ask is, why are you having a wedding reception?
Right.
Shut up and let them answer. And they might say, well, my parents are making us do it. It's going to be, my parents are really, this is a chance for them to show off to their, my dad's employees, or whatever the case may be. But asking why in that way is really key. And the majority of us in the DJ business don't understand a wedding from a female perspective. My wife laughs at me now because I can identify calla lilies and baby's breath, and I understand overlays on linens, and you have to really get planning from a woman's perspective. And so I'm going to recommend a book called Why She Buys, a terrific short book with great anecdotes and examples of how a 21st century woman has formed her shopping decisions, why she buys what she does, and it allows us to do a better job of empathizing, because a wedding reception is not a dance party. We love to think that it is, and we judge our success by how full the dance floor is, but it's not. It's a bride and her mom fighting over what color the invitation should be, or what font she should use on the menu cards. It's a very stressful time for a bride who's trying to be a new independent woman on her own, but dealing with a family that's maybe paying for this. It's the biggest, most expensive party that this young couple will ever throw. There's a tremendous amount of stress. It's a bride trying to create a relationship with a mother-in-law. There's so much stress and pressure involved. So why are you having a wedding reception really helps them get to the core of why it's important. Why is it important for grandma to be able to hear when they say their vows? Why is it important for everybody in the room to be able to hear her dad's speech as he pours out his heart? Michael said that people in his area don't necessarily like attention focused on them. That's also another point of stress. And so when you say, okay, you've asked me to make your first dance a minute and a half, why? And then that allows them to say, well, we're painfully shy. Now, they're of course not going to say that to you, but they're going to say, we just don't want the spotlight on us. That informs all the rest of the planning that you would do that day with them. It helps you understand. So asking why, asking better questions is the real key to giving them the wedding they want.
Well, and that should give you an idea of, okay, well, if you don't want the spotlight, here's another idea that maybe we can do that, as just off the top of my head, maybe start the first dance and then having other people join you, or doing something with that so that the spotlight isn't necessarily focused directly on to the two of you. We're sharing that spotlight with other people. You're a part of it. So you're still able to have this formality as a part of your reception, but hey, here's an idea of something that we might be able to do to make it a little bit different. I had another thought in my mind, and it's, oh, you were talking about books. I'd also like to throw out a couple of books that I think that are great reads. One of them is, well, first, it's not a book. Yeah, it's a book, but you can watch a 20-minute video. If you've never watched the video of Start with Why by Simon Sinek, Sinek, on YouTube, it's a TED Talk. But we've been talking an awful lot about why, asking couples why it is that they want to do what they want to do. I also think it's important for us in this business to really understand why we're here. What is our purpose for doing weddings? Are we simply here to provide music and make a few announcements, or is our purpose much larger than that? Our purpose is to help people create unforgettably fun wedding celebrations, to bring families together, to see people celebrate and have fun, and to rejoice in a singular moment, one that will never happen exactly the same way ever again. I don't care how good the DJ is, he can never repeat it. So Starting with Why, I think, is a great video. Another great book is Book Yourself Solid by Michael Port, which will also help you. We were talking about being able to identify your client. That is so, Jim, I could not agree with you more. That is so vitally important. And what's sad is that so many DJs will say, my ideal client is the one with the checkbook. No, it's not. You will be miserable if that's the way you lead your life, and you're going to be giving a lot of money back, because if you're only in it for the money, then your passion and your joy for doing what it is that you do will never shine, and people will be able to see that. Just like I said about doing first dances, that you just feel like you have to go through the motions. If you're simply going through the motions, then you're never really gonna have that client that is willing to pay you big bucks to do their wedding for them. And then last but not least, and you mentioned my Disney attachment a few moments ago, Be Our Guest is written by the Disney Institute, and it's about the Disney guest service model, and one that I use in my business of exceeding expectations at every turn, trying to find that unexpected magic that you can help couples find, or that you can use to help couples realize unexpected magic throughout the course of the planning and their actual event.
And I think, Ron, let me just jump on and talk about listening. Okay. Which is, as DJs, we love to talk. And in sales meetings and in presentations and the planning meetings, I used to find myself dominating the conversation because I thought it was up to me to lead it. Now, I really try to shut up. I try to ask a question and really listen. And that's when you find the opportunity, when you've gotten 3 or 4 questions in, and you've built trust with the client, and they really begin to open up and say, well, my mom and I have been arguing about this. And so asking the question and then shutting up, really listening. And I think that in the hospitality industry, in the Disney industry, in places like the Four Seasons or the Ritz-Carlton, or if you read books about hospitality, which I do, there's a great one by Bill Marriott called Without Reservations. There's another one called Chocolates on the Pillow. The things that they teach their employees to do, to just listen and look for opportunities. I had a client, a bride, who was really stressed and she was not sleeping well. So I went online, and there's this great lullaby CD that we used to actually play for our sons. It was kind of their nighttime routine. It's by Jim Chappelle. It's called Night Songs and Lullabies. I sent her that CD. I wouldn't do that for every bride, but for that particular bride, she really appreciated that care and thoughtfulness and attention to detail. Now, you don't want to, again, make it forced or manufactured. You don't want to do it for every client the same way, but look for opportunities. And then at the event, be listening. And I know it's hard to listen when you're in the middle of an announcement, but there are times when you can tell that the two sides of the family don't know each other. And you can hear that. You can feel that in the room. You can also feel when the conversation level is bubbling really high, and you know when you play your first song, the dance floor is going to explode. So practice intentional listening, and your clients will appreciate it. You'll offer better service as a result.
That's why I think it's so important. You were talking about these things that people carry around with them all night. That's why I have an issue with don't be Facebooking and tweeting, and because even the fastest Facebook post, you take the risk of missing out on this one moment that you might have been able to expound upon rather than just letting it float by. So,
and Ron, I'd love to open it up for questions. I wanted to mention, you said Simon Sinek's TED Talk. I want to mention Simon Sinek's Millennial Talk.
Oh, yeah.
It's about 15 minutes long, and you have to watch it. He lays out why millennials are the way they are, and we tend
apologizes for it.
Well, I mean, we tend to give them a bad rap or blame them. Mm-hmm. They're the result of their upbringing.
Right.
It's not their fault. And the reason they are the way they are, Simon lists those. So seek out that Simon Sinek on millennials and watch that 15 minutes, because it really helps us understand. Yeah, I believe it's on YouTube. And I know I've seen a lot of people post it on Facebook, but that's a great video.
And he actually does that presentation to millennials. So you can hear the millennials' reaction to it while he's doing the presentation, which I found to be very profound.
Absolutely, and they agree. So it's not, again, it's not placing blame. It's helping us understand where they come from, why they are the way they are, and how we can serve them better. That's really all the reading I do, all the marketing research I do. It's because I want to provide my clients a better experience. I want to serve them better in the way they want to be served. So that's really, in the next 5 years, as perhaps music becomes less and less important, serving them better becomes more and more important. Yeah. So do we want to open up?
Yeah, we have about 10, 15 minutes. So let's go ahead and let's see if we have any questions. And if not, then Jim, you and I can just talk on. But
if you have a question, we'll kind of unmute. You can unmute yourself and then go ahead and ask away.
Just jump in. Anybody? Bueller. Nobody has any questions. God, Jim, you and I are so good and thorough that nobody has any questions for us. Okay, so let me do it a different way, because I survey my guests after each of my I survey my guests. I survey my. Oh, wait a minute. Here's a question. Specifically, how do you get your clients to better understand your value? That, I wish I could answer that question for you in one very simple sentence, but to be quite honest with you, it's not that easy. It takes a lot more than just saying, hey, well, to convey your value. also means that a lot of other things, you need to know what some of the things that we were just talking about as far as who is your perfect client, what is it that you excel at doing, what are the results that you provide. We have
Victoria's cat is cracking me up. So Ian, that's a multifaceted question.
Yeah.
How do you help them understand your value? It starts with your referrals. What do your referrals say about you? So to do that, you have to have built a relationship and done a great job in the top venues in your area. Worked with the top photographers, the top wedding planners. I am a member of the Association of Bridal Consultants, the International Live Events Association. I go to all of our local Perfect Wedding Guide luncheons. I try to go and circulate at least 2 or 3 times a month in the places where all of these vendors hang out. When I do work at a venue, I always write handwritten thank you notes. I always communicate with them in advance. Communication is such an important part of what we do. So part of it starts with your referral stream. What do your former clients say about you? Do you ask them to post reviews about your service on Wedding Wire and the Knot? So this is all at the beginning, before you've even had a chance to meet with them or talk with them. They're Googling you and doing research. What does your website look like? I was way behind on my website. It was not friendly. I had a blue domain website that was Flash-based. Well, nobody on an iPad or an iPhone could see it, and really, I think, damaged my reach until I moved to a different platform. Is your website clickable? How does it look on a mobile device? Can you text you from your website? Can you touch and call you? Is your phone number clickable? There's a million other things we could talk about, but does your website represent your brand, represent the things that you do exceptionally well? So those things are before the client gets to you.
Jim, hang on just a second. Whatever, if your microphone is not muted, would you be so kind as to mute it for us, please? Thank you. Go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry. There was just.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, actually, well, I don't know if it's a question as much as it was a comment that I don't have the results of yet, but I dropped out of the DJ industry for about 8 years. I just got so burned out on Neanderthal moms and anyway, so I came back into it and actually met with Bill Herman before I did that, and he convinced me to go for it. And but I'm finding that, like you guys have already said, the new brides are significantly different than they were 10 years ago. And that, I've accepted that, but what I have done over the last 2 years is worked on my business, my professional business networking. For example, I've joined BNI. And BNI, through BNI, I now have a couple connections where I'm going to be the exclusive DJ for these venues because of that relationship. Has nothing to do with my interaction with brides. I mean, I have referrals from 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, but they mean nothing anymore. Brides are really looking for that kind of referral. Videotape. I mean, I've got videotape referrals with time, date stamp 1999 on them, you know, and they don't want to see that, you know. And so I'm finding that right now I've got 2, possibly 3 venues where I'm going to be either the only or a preferred DJ just from my business networking. And I'm hoping that results in something, but that's really brand new and it's going to be starting this spring. So I'm hoping that works well. I mean, I'm still doing weddings. I just got 2 weddings that came in this week, but really I want to be doing this full time like a lot of you guys do. And I used to do it almost full time until I got burned out, but that's my kind of question and answer at the same time.
And Scott, the thing that is so important with that is how can you make the venue's job easier? My philosophy with the photographer, with the caterer, with the florist, with the lady who does the cake, How can I make your job easier? Can I hold the doors open while you bring the cake in? Can I, I never do anything or announce anything until I know the photographer is in the room and ready. I always talk to the caterer in advance and make sure that our timelines match. So communication, but your philosophy of how can I make your job easier? What can I do to, they deal with DJs all the time that are terrible. And if you talk to a catering manager, they'll tell you the DJ showed up late. The DJ was dressed in a sweatshirt and exercise pants. The DJ didn't have the introductions written down. The DJ played the wrong first dance song, et cetera, et cetera. So the bar is set pretty low. If we put a little bit of effort into networking and making everybody's job easier, you'll improve. So the other parts of that equation are, how well do you perform at the event? Do you provide great pictures and video? We are in an era now where nobody reads text. And so if you're getting short, quick, great clips of a full dance floor at your wedding, and not using videotapes with the time and date stamped on the bottom, but shooting some current video. And I tell you, I used to bring this. This is a Canon T6i because I thought we really needed high quality photos and video. An iPhone shoots as good or better. It's less clunky and easier, and you can post it directly to social media. So all of those prongs are how you prove your value, Ian. I hope that answers. That's a long answer. Scott?
Yeah, and on top of that, and Ian asked a legitimate question, and I fear that, especially coming from the old school DJ mentality like I have, we're all kind of territorial when it comes to me being the DJ. It's my equipment, the rubber band, asking do you allow the videographer to rubber band his microphone? Heck yeah, why not? Because that videographer is going to talk to other people, and he's going to talk to the bride. Oh, that DJ was great to work with. I mean, have everything set up and ready to go. There's no way that they're going to ruin your system because you have control over the volume of the input and everything. So, like you said, greet people, hug the photographer, whatever it takes, because that's where you're going to get. I mean, I've had so many venue owners and managers say, man, that was the most awesome experience I've seen a DJ. I see all these, and I'm going to use the word again, Neanderthal DJs who come in with a mindset of, hey, this is my equipment. Well, yeah, it is, but you're renting it out to people to use to benefit and serve a client. And so I would encourage other DJs just to let down their guard and let the love in, so to speak. Anyway.
Yep.
Rick Webb, did you have a question?
Kind of was working on one.
Well, I keep watching you move the mic closer to your mouth, and I go, okay, I know he's got to have a question in there somewhere.
That was more, it was in my peripherals that bothered me.
Oh, okay, all right.
But I'm trying to formulate a question around this, but like basically, I'm in Ohio now. I've made a great success here. I got a nice business going, everything and stuff like that. But I'm graduating college, so I am graduating this May, and I am moving to North Carolina, which is where my full-time job's going to be, basically. And I'm going to be opening up a whole brand new DJ business down there, a whole new venture. And I'm trying to figure out the best way to get my foot in the door and get there quickly right now. So like what best marketing practices and stuff like that, what's working in the industry right now. I'm already in 2 bridal shows right now that are going to be kicking off here in January. So that's some stuff I'm working with, and just some feedback. What do you guys think of ways to help boost me back up to where I am now, basically?
I don't think there's a magic formula. I think you will have a ramp up period. You might contact DJs that are in the North Carolina market rather than them being worried about you or seeing you as competition. The best places that have good chapters or get-togethers of DJs, they see that there's way more business than there are DJs. So if you kind of work on setting up cooperative relationships, see if they have an ILEA chapter or a NACE chapter there, find out when their bridal shows are. When I really wanted to take my business full time, I did a bridal show every January to try to fill in my open dates. So planning ahead and doing a bridal show is important. So that might be a way to do it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that any association that you can join that's going to get you closer to any of the wedding professionals, networking groups that you can join. You want a pencil and paper, aren't you?
I'm typing it out for you.
NACE, ABC. There's another one, Jim, I think that you have in your market, but I don't have in mine. I'm trying to remember the name of ISIS.
It used to be ISIS. They changed it to ILEA.
ILEA, okay.
Now it's the International Live Events Association.
Right. Any of those groups. And actually here in Kansas City, there's also just a local group called First Tuesday, which is like a national, it's kind of like a franchise. Wedding professionals every month are given a topic that they talk about. But that may be something else. So just join as many of the local groups and associations that you can in your market.
Michael, Victoria, any questions from you guys?
Does your cat have any questions, Victoria? Okay.
That's this call mascot.
Yeah, that's it. All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and bring this to a close. We've been at this for about an hour now. If you have any last minute questions come up, you can reach me at Ron at discjockeynews.com. Jim, do you want to give a contact?
Sure. I'm going to type yours out.
Look at you. You're the typer here. I'm not the typer, so. So there's
and we welcome info. Obviously. Yep. Feel free to contact us on Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, email, etc. I think Ron and I were very fortunate in that we were part of the business on a national level and received help and mentoring from a lot of people, and we just want to pass that on and pay it forward. So anything we can do to help, please don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah, we got you. All right. Thanks so much, y'all. And I'm going to bring this to a close, and we'll see you hopefully at another time somewhere down the road.
Happy New Year.
Come on, Rod.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Come on, Rod. One more question.
One more. Who's got one more question? Oh, okay. I thought.
I was on you.
Okay. Evidently no one. All right. See y'all later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.